Hezbollah has violated the ceasefire agreement again, this time by firing rockets from the Lebanese territory towards Israel in the area of Mount Dov. In response to the launches, Israel's Air Force attacked dozens of launch sites and other Hezbollah infrastructures throughout Lebanon. Just before the strikes were launched, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a clear warning that Israel will respond forcefully to this. No one is very much surprised that this has occurred, as we know that violating agreements is part of Hezbollah's DNA. In another development that is very surprising to everyone, the Assad regime in Syria has asked Israel for help in its battle against the jihadist insurgency. Israel has replied that if Assad wants help from Israel, they must first expel all the Iranian-backed forces from Syria. This raises the question if Syria will be the new battleground for a direct war between Israel and Iran. Meanwhile, the IDF is changing the face of the Gaza Strip as Hamas has begun recruiting 15-year-old children to be terrorists and using tunnels that have not yet been discovered. In a related story, after being expelled from Qatar, senior Hamas officials are considering settling in Malaysia. Meanwhile, incoming US President-elect Donald Trump sent a direct threat to Hamas in a post he wrote on his own social media network, stating that if the hostages are not released, there will be severe consequences. Those responsible will be punished more severely than anyone has been punished in United States history, he wrote, and called for the immediate release of the Israeli hostages. We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 425th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq, all of which are acting under the auspices of Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. Before we start, please take a moment to click on the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. I also want to tell you about the sponsor for today's video, Arza. This Israeli company brings the Holy Land right to your door, and I'll tell you more about them later in the video. But first, the news. The IDF confirmed on Monday that Hezbollah has once again violated the ceasefire by launching 2 mortar shells towards the Mount Dov area in the northern part of Israel on the border with Lebanon. The IDF announcement added that there were no casualties in the incident. The IDF issued a statement saying, "Tonight's firing towards the State of Israel constitutes a violation of the ceasefire agreement between the State of Israel and the State of Lebanon. The State of Israel demands that the relevant parties in Lebanon implement the understanding and prevent hostile activity by the Hezbollah terrorist organization from its territory." In response, the Israeli Air Force launched a series of strikes on dozens of Hezbollah positions all over Lebanon, including the launcher from which the firing was carried out in the Barak area in southern Lebanon. Following these series of events, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Hezbollah's firing at Mount Dov constitutes a severe violation of the ceasefire, and Israel will respond forcefully to this. "We are determined to continue enforcing the ceasefire and to respond to any violation by Hezbollah, minor or severe." Hezbollah also issued a statement in which it took responsibility for firing the weapons at Mount Dov, but added complaints that Israel is the one who is violating the ceasefire by launching attacks and penetrating into the Lebanese airspace, including over Beirut. In any case, although both sides have generally lowered the intensity of combat operations, incidents continue to occur. Even on Tuesday morning, the IDF was compelled to attack 3 targets in southern Lebanon after detecting Hezbollah activity, which was a violation of the ceasefire agreements. At least in one case, in Marjayun, a hit was identified. In other areas, warning shots have been fired at individuals who were approaching areas they were not authorized to enter. It is important to remember that according to the letter of assurances given by the United States as part of the ceasefire, in the southern Lebanon area, Israel reserved the right to act at any time against violations of the ceasefire. Outside the southern area, Israel reserves the right to act against the development of threats directed against it if the Lebanese National Army is unable or unwilling to confront these threats. If Israel decides to take such steps, it must notify the United States whenever possible. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on the northern border in the battle against the Hezbollah terrorist organization and bring you up-to-date and detailed content on what's happening in Israel on a continuous basis. You can also help us by sharing our videos on YouTube, subscribing to this YouTube channel, and following us on social media. If you want to visit our website at tbnisrael.com, you can also make a donation to help us create more content on what is happening in Israel. Now switching our focus to the events in Syria, where the surging rebellion against the Assad regime by jihadist forces backed by Turkey has already had a direct effect on Israel. Hezbollah appears to have admitted that it does not have the capacity at this point to send forces into Syria to rescue the Assad regime as it did in 2012. According to a Reuters report, although no official request has yet been received, Hezbollah clarified that it is not willing to intervene, especially a few days after the end of the prolonged fighting against Israel. This decision may significantly impact the balance of power in the region and increase pressure on the Assad regime. The surprise offensive by the rebels in Syria, which began last Wednesday, just as the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah officially began, led to the city of Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria, to quickly fall into the hands of the rebels. These rebel forces are dominated by the Sunni jihadist organization Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which was obviously set out to exploit the weakness of Hezbollah. It is also obvious that the attention of the Iranian-backed Shiite militias in Syria, who Assad depends on to prop up his regime, were distracted by the events in Lebanon and unprepared for a strike coming from another direction. The rebels took full advantage of the opportunity presented by these circumstances and stormed into Aleppo, routing the Assad regime forces out of there and taking physical control of large swaths of territory in northwestern Syria. Iran was also caught unprepared for this attack, but reports have surfaced that they have begun moving small numbers of Shiite militia forces from Iraq into Syria to try and push back the rebels. The Assad regime's Ministry of Defense claims to have made some progress in reinforcing its defensive lines and blunting the rebel advance, while both the regime and Iran have accused the West of encouraging the rebels. Meanwhile, Russia has sent what assistance it can spare from its war in Ukraine, including some fixed-wing aircrafts and special forces troops. According to intelligence estimates, the airstrikes by the Russian and the Assad regime aircrafts have had some results in slowing down the rebels, but they have not stopped them. All of this has set up one of the most incredible developments in the Middle East in a very long time. Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, who inherited the role from his father, Hafez al-Assad, has turned in desperation to his old enemy, Israel, to try and turn back this attack from these ferocious jihadists backed by Turkey. Israel knows it holds all the cards in this situation and is making any assistance to Assad conditional on his ejecting all Iranian-backed militias and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps operations from his territory, from Syria. In all of this, there is a clear trend that Assad's forces are weakening. The Iranians are having great difficulty trying to stabilize the situation, and Israel is seizing the opportunity to demand a strategic change, a step that may alter the balance of power in the Middle East. To make a brief comment of my own on this situation, Israel is right to try and exact a promise from Assad to expel the Iranian forces from his country in exchange for Israel's help in pushing back the jihadist groups. But Assad also has a point here, because it would create a lot of problems for Israel if these jihadists took over control of Syria. As bad of a neighbor as the Assad regime is for Israel, acting as a proxy for Iran and allowing the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, to use Syrian territory to act against Israel, these jihadists taking over Syria and turning it into a base for global terrorism wouldn't be an improvement. This would also create many new problems for Europe and the United States, just so you know. So, one way or another, Israel is likely to be fighting against these groups sooner or later. And it might be better to do it now while they're still relevantly weak. On the other hand, maybe we should allow Iran to further exhaust itself fighting against them for a while and then finish off whatever wins that fight. There are a lot of variables in this situation, and it's not easy to know what to do. This is probably why the Bible tells us to pray for all those who are in positions of authority, who need to make decisions, and I would like to ask you to pray earnestly for Israel's leaders as they try to make the best decisions about what to do next. Now, to get back into the news, the rebels in Syria are dominated by Hayat Tahrir el-Sham, an Al-Qaeda-linked group which, as I mentioned before, also has the support of Turkey. As of Tuesday morning, they were continuing to advance. There are reports that they have inflicted large numbers of casualties on the Assad regime forces and captured large stocks of weaponry and ammunition. This includes an advanced air defense system that they might be able to use to defend against air attacks by Russia and the regime planes. It is also notable that a rebel-launched UAV hit an Assad regime manned military helicopter at the Hama airport over the last 24 hours. All of this is setting up the possibility of a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran in Syria. Iranian-backed Shiite militias from Iraq have already sent fighters and weapons into Syria to try and reinforce the Assad regime, even while Israel has continued to launch airstrikes on Iranian bases in Syria to push back against attempts to rearm Hezbollah. Of course, it's impossible to know if Iran is sending weapons into Syria to try to rearm Hezbollah or to reinforce the Shiite militias fighting against the Al-Qaeda-linked rebels. As I said, there's a lot of variables in this situation, and they can change from one day or even 1 hour to the next. One thing that won't change is that here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on what's happening and how it affects Israel and you, wherever you live. This is a good place to tell you that yesterday we traveled north with the TBN Israel news team to produce a report about how the ceasefire looks on the ground from Haifa, Israel's third largest city, which has been a major target of Hezbollah fire in this war. While we were there, we spoke with owners of small businesses and other citizens who are just beginning to return to their normal routine after more than a year of conflict. Speaking of small businesses, and for that matter, also large businesses, many of Israel's private sector enterprises have been badly damaged by this war. The daily rocket and drone attacks have hit the civilian communities far from the front lines, making it impossible for tourists to come and enjoy the Holy Land, and also making it impossible for normal workday life in factories and workshops. Because so many men have been called up to reserve duty in the IDF, many families are struggling with only one parent at home, trying to work and take care of the children. In the midst of all of this, the economy, especially in the areas near the Gaza Strip and the Lebanese border, has suffered a big hit. You, all of you, our viewers, pray for Israel, and we know you would love to come and visit the Holy Land to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and the apostles. We hope to see you here soon, but until you can come, you can help Israel by bringing a piece of it to you. I'm talking about Arza boxes, locally produced, handmade products filled with flavors, scents, and craftsmanship made right here by local Israeli artisans. So ordering Arza boxes is not only a great gift to yourself or to your loved ones, it's honestly sending hope and comfort to our brave people, the people of Israel. Arza means in Hebrew, towards the land. and that's exactly what it's all about. So please go to www.artzabox.com and don't forget to use our exclusive 10% discount by entering the code TBNIL, and together we will be a blessing to Israel, to you, and to the whole world. Thank you, and now let's get back to the news and shifting our focus once again to the Gaza Strip. In recent months, the IDF has carried out a broad strategic move to expand its control in the central Gaza Strip, focusing on the Netzarim Highway, which connects the border with Israel to the Mediterranean Sea. This expansion includes control of an area of about 18 square kilometers and the construction of a strategic corridor that divides the Gaza Strip into two. As part of the move, the IDF established 19 large military bases along this highway, some of which have been expanded over the past 3 months. The bases are equipped with soldier accommodations, defensive trenches, intrusion prevention obstacles, and advanced communication networks. Additionally, dozens of small observation posts have been added around the area to strengthen the operational presence. Alongside this, comprehensive engineering actions were carried out, including the demolition of more than 600 buildings in the area, with the aim of creating a buffer zone 1 to 2 kilometers wide along this axis. This area is intended to prevent sniper fire and possible infiltration by terrorist elements. The Netzarim Highway itself has become a central route for IDF forces, providing a significant operational advantage by allowing regulation of movement in the Gaza Strip. The road has been repaved to ensure the safe movement of military vehicles, even in harsh weather conditions. At the same time, the forces focused on identifying and destroying offensive tunnels alongside targeted attacks on terror infrastructures. In addition, advanced technological capabilities are being used, including monitoring arrays and intelligence gathering, in order to ensure operational control of the area. Control over the Netzarim axis represents a significant shift in the IDF's approach after years of avoiding permanent presence in the Gaza Strip. The engineering and operational actions ensure not only long-term security but also allow for the neutralization of threats to the communities surrounding the Gaza Strip, the Israeli communities. The IDF continues its moves to expand its hold in the central Gaza Strip, integrating engineering, armored, and infantry forces holding strategic positions along and around the highway. The moves are intended to create full control in the area, reduce future threats, and ensure strategic freedom of action in the heart of the Gaza Strip. In a related story, Hamas leaders have left Qatar along with their families and are currently in different countries, with Malaysia being considered a likely final destination for them, all together in. This follows the announcement by Qatar that it is suspending its role as mediator in the ceasefire negotiations in the Gaza Strip, while the United States expressed opposition to Hamas's presence in Doha. A spokesman for the Qatari Foreign Ministry clarified that members of Hamas's negotiating teams are no longer staying in Doha and are moving between different capitals in the region without clarifying which specific capitals. Against this backdrop, Monday brought an extremely important statement from the United States President-elect Donald Trump, who sent a harsh threat to Hamas, demanding the release of the hostages before his inauguration on January 20, 2025. Trump added in his statement that if this warning is not heeded, consequences from hell would strike the Middle East, and that the responsible parties will be hit harder than any blow they've ever suffered in American history. The focus of Trump's plan appears to be on three main methods of pressure. He would harm Hamas's funding sources through closing charities in the United States and influencing Qatar to stop funding Hamas. He would also reimpose sanctions against Iran, which may lead to Tehran pressuring Hamas and the commitment that if the hostages are not returned, the US will not participate in rebuilding the Gaza Strip. Intelligence sources estimate that the threat is intended to expedite negotiations for a hostage deal in which Israel, Egypt, and other internationally recognized parties are participating while maintaining focus on a clear outcome, the return of the hostages home. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development. And once again, I will invite you to click on that subscribe button so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And I want to ask you to pray, because this is a spiritual war. So please pray for the peace of the IDF soldiers wherever they are, in the air, at sea, and on land. Pray for the peace of our hostages in the Gaza Strip, that they may return home quickly. Pray for the peace of the residents of the north who are beginning to return to their homes and try to return to a normal routine. Pray for the peace of the people of Israel, for wisdom to our leaders, and most importantly, don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And together, we will win this war because God is in control.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.